Well, Way, the post-wrestling Christmas show rolls on, and like any Santa Claus parade, the biggest guest comes right at the end. And here we are, joined by AEW's own, Canada's own, Renee Paquette. Renee, a Merry Christmas to you, and welcome to Post Wrestling, a long time coming, and we thank you so much for joining us here on our big Christmas show, our biggest show of the year.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. So excited. Great to see you guys. Merry Christmas.
So tell us a little bit about Christmas in Cincinnati and how it might differ from Christmas in Toronto now that you have a Christmas or two under your belt in your new digs.
Yeah, so I've definitely got a few under my belt. Here's the thing that really surprised me when I moved from Las Vegas to Cincinnati. I was like, oh my gosh, winter again. This is going to be great. And then I was like, oh, this is not a Canadian winter. It's actually really nice because it still gets cold. We obviously still get some snow, but we're not like beaten over the head with it like we are in Toronto or other parts of Canada. So it's nice. I don't know that like a white Christmas is always on the docket, but it's always kind of up for debate in Toronto too. So it's really nice though. I love it. The only problem is that our house is really old. So she's a tad drafty.
I see.
Yeah.
As someone that bought a 100-year-old house, a nightmare, an absolute nightmare.
It's cold. There's little like cold pockets you got to be prepared for.
So, we are, of course, speaking to a fellow Canadian, and, we actually maybe share a little bit of history in the same circles working in television in Canada, principally spending some time at Bite Television.
Yes.
So, we both been very familiar with your work ever since the days of ripping it and lipping it on Bite TV.
Oh, no, there's a clip.
Yeah, we will not play it. Don't worry. People can type it in and look it up on YouTube themselves. But to really see your evolution, through the ranks, maybe as we would say, from Canadian television on cable over to everything that you've accomplished today, really has been amazing for us to watch. Maybe talk to us about, take us back to Renee Paquette at the Sound Academy doing this edition of Ripping It and Lipping It with Preposterous. And did you ever see yourself where you are right now?
Well, I think I always had pretty lofty dreams for myself. And I knew that there was a ton of things that I wanted to accomplish, but you got to start somewhere. And, I always give that love back to Bite TV, back to The Score, the people that took a shot on me really early on in my career. I mean, Jason Agnew was that guy that really helped me get my foot in the door, especially at Bite TV, to start doing Ripping It and Lipping It. When I went in for my audition, which was for a different show, which ended up becoming Ripping It and Lipping It, I was really just trying to figure out who I was as a host. And that was something that I'm always so grateful that I had the opportunity to do, was like start somewhere in like, a smaller space, so you can try some stuff out. And boy, was I trying some stuff out. Does this work? Is this funny? Does this voice work for me? So I was really trying all those things out. And then it was those building blocks. You start with one show that got me, I don't know that got me on the radar of The Score, but it gave me enough of a demo reel to feel confident to go and bang on the door at The Score. So exactly, that's what I did. That young woman right there was literally banging on the door at The Score, being like, can I send someone a demo reel? Who do I need to email? This is the days of when you had a headshot and a resume in your hand. So I was out doing all of those things. And it was just looking for different opportunities. I never knew going to The Score, which the reason why I went there was because they did more comedic style interviews in the sports world. And that was more where I wanted to hang. So to get there and then have pro wrestling land on my lap there. We had the rights to WWE in Canada. So that's where the opportunity came to be like, hey, do you want to do a post show for Monday Night Raw? And I was like, yeah, of course, sure. And then I guess sort of the rest is history from there. I mean, that was really me dipping my toe into the pro wrestling world. And then that led to me joining WWE, but just being so familiar with their product specifically to know that when I started working there, I knew the talk, I knew the vernaculars, I knew all of those things. Obviously, I knew who everybody was. But yeah, it was, it was really kind of fun to look back on the journey of starting at one spot and then ending up where I am now. It's really cool. It's fun. I'm really, I guess, Grateful is the word, while we're in the holiday spirit of just feeling happy about where things are.
You also have like a huge foundation in improv. And I'm kind of curious as we look at the current state of professional wrestling, where like the in-ring quality is just, it's so huge that
Yeah.
all of these talents are looking for ways to differentiate themselves. I'm curious if like those aspects are going to more be seeping into performers as they're breaking in, of like the personality side and what you can get attention wise online for yourself. It seems like that's been a huge advantage for those that have taken that route and worked it into professional wrestling.
Oh, certainly. I think there's so many parallels. I think, there's like that phrase that everything is pro wrestling. And that is the case. I think so many different things can apply to that space. But I mean, you look at the way that people are able to break in now, and of course, social media presence, being able to have different matches on the indies and be able to like kind of blast that out in a certain way. But there's definitely like a space for everybody, whether you're somebody that wants to go out and have these amazing matches, you're an incredible athlete, or you're somebody that's a really great storyteller, or you're somebody that's a really great personality. You look at somebody like Danhausen, for example, is somebody who's like, he's really taken that tool of being very funny, being this great character, but also like he worked his ass off, especially during the pandemic, to like stay relevant, stay in people's feeds, stay creating content, and just like staying creative and inspired to where he's at now, to be able to be as a part of AEW. Oh, look at us. Look, you guys ready to go. Producers ain't messing around right now. I love it. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Danhausen's like a really great example of somebody who can dabble in so many different spaces. And, I think the Orange Cassidy is another one of those guys too, that he's such a great character. And that's the thing that you lean on. And then you get him in the ring and you're like, oh my God, look at this guy go. He is so versatile. He's such a great asset to AEW. I mean, to really anywhere he is, but yeah, he is awesome.
You have started working as a backstage producer for AEW recently, and I really am curious, speaking as somebody who has been in front of the camera, what do you kind of take into your producer role with your approach to making backstage interviews feel as organic as you're able to make them?
I think the thing that I always kind of go to is, how can we simplify this? A lot of things are so complicated and complex, especially in AEW when there's so many different storylines going on. There's many different championships that we can have 90 seconds in an on-cam, and it's like, wait, we've got 3 different titles, 3 different matches that we've got to plug. It's like trying to find what is the root of what we're trying to achieve right now. What's the easiest way to get to that while still being entertaining and making the most of that TV time. I mean, we all know when the camera's on you, that is so important to make the most of that time. So yeah, it's just trying to simplify things and make sure that we're sort of checking those boxes in terms of the storytelling. But then there's also the other aspect of the lighting, the making sure people are standing in the right spot, having your character shining in the best way. I think it's all those things that you really just need to look at to make the most of those backstage interviews.
In terms of you've been now with AEW for just over a year. The big announcement was made here in Toronto. Tell me a bit about just the balance that you and Jon have found being on the road every week with a daughter on top of it. Do you guys have like a kind of solid routine? And how often is she on the road with you guys?
So we take her only when we do pay-per-views, because then we'll be gone longer. Otherwise, it's like we fly out day of the show and we're right back home Thursday. So it's harder on her. It's obviously harder on me, I think, to bring her every week. That I just think it's weird when you're figuring out being a parent and you're like, what is the best for everybody here? Is being with her mom, is her being with me all the time going to be the thing she needs? Or is it being able to be at home, be in a better routine? I feel like carting a kid into different time zones. Oh my God, that little honey bunny, she's so little there. It's figuring it all out. I remember talking to Becky Lynch sort of early on, asking her advice on like what her and Seth do. how they balance that. And she said, she's like, you really just kind of figure out what works best for you. And that was the thing for us is like, yeah, when there's pay-per-views and we take her and we're gone for the weekend and we can make the most of it. If you're gone from a Wednesday through to a Sunday, she'll come with us. But otherwise we're in and out. But in terms of like an actual routine, not really. We never know what we're doing. We're winging it most of the time. But yeah, for me, we're so lucky that Jon and I get to be on the road together. We get to have those moments where it's just like, okay, it's just me and you. We're in the hotel. We can kind of unwind together, and just him and I get to connect in that moment. And then we get home, and then it's sort of all hands on deck for that. But then when we're home, for me particularly, is like when I'm home, I just get to be with her. Then I get to like put on my mom hat. And we're baking, we're doing crafts, we're, just going out and doing kid things to keep her entertained. So it's nice to be in both roles, because I was definitely feeling that a little bit before I joined AEW. It was like, what am I doing? I love being a mom. I love being in that role, but I was really missing that work aspect. So now that I feel like both cups are full, it's very nice.
It seems that this industry overall has taken major leaps towards being able to have that balance that, I mean,
Totally.
even 10 years ago, much less when we're hearing the horror stories of the 80s and stuff, where it's like you grew up without a parent.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. Jon and I were talking about that not too long ago, where it's like, I think so many families got used to, we'll use like the men, for example, in this, because that was predominantly what it was. There wasn't a lot of women or like moms on the road. Of course, there was a few, but not a ton. But the dads would be gone, and then you come home, and then it's like, wait, we've been living life without you. It's so cool that that's not the case now. Like, thank God. I used to always kind of think that being on the road before, of like, oh my gosh, like how do these guys juggle doing that? You're on the road, because I know how exhausted you are coming off the road. I can't imagine what it's like when you're wrestling and having matches and your body's beat up, and then you come home and now you're like, okay, I'm down on the floor playing with my kids. Like, it's rough. It's really hard. It's very hard to strike that balance of doing it all.
One of AEW's bigger hires, I would say, maybe to us, who are maybe fans of studying not just the in-ring product but also the production of the show this year, has been Michael Mansouri, and somebody you spent a lot of time working with in the past. I'm just kind of curious to hear from somebody who works in production. What sort of changes would you say that he's been responsible for?
I think for Mike, it's trying to get that cohesion of the show. There's so much going on in a young company that has grown leaps and bounds in the last couple of years to be tacking on more shows, to be doing more live TV. He is like the creme de la creme when it comes to live television, especially in the wrestling space. He was always so great and still is, but taking that time to work with talent, help them maybe on entrances. He's really great at finding those big star moments. This is what an entrance can look like. Take your time with this. Find the camera for this moment. He's so great at working with talent to help them figure out those things, especially when you've got talent that have worked, they've been doing live events, doing indies for so long. It's so much different than doing television and hitting TV times, hitting commercial spots, to be able to find the hard cam, find those moments to find the camera and have those times that can really separate somebody into to feeling like a gigantic superstar in this industry. So he's really great at that. He's somebody, even when we're doing 0 hour and whatnot, he is always in my ear. I know that I can trust him. And that's something that I think is so important as a producer. I know that he's going to get me where I need to be. I could go out. I have done shows with Mike without having any papers, no truck sheets, not knowing what's going on, over the decade that I've known him. And he's always gotten me where I need to be. And that trust to be able to have with somebody is really great for a performer, to know that I'm in good hands. But he's just the best. He really is such a huge asset to AEW. Bringing him in was clutch.
I mean, it was quite surreal to be watching All In and seeing two past hosts of Catch 23 here at Wembley Stadium in Renee Paquette and RJ City here in front of 80,000 people, and I can claim that I was there to see them in front of about 60 people at Columbia.
Yeah, 100%. It's so funny when we were like when I was able to kind of like reconnect with RJ. It's like, do you remember when we met? And he was like, yeah, it was a comedy bar when I was probably, one of those shows. I'm like, a lot of those nights at Comedy Bar are a little foggy to me. So you might need to run me back on that one.
One thing I did want to also ask you about is both Way and I read your husband, Jon Moxley's book. And I found this book, like there are select, like there's a million wrestling books, but in terms of someone that found his voice, like on the page instantaneously, like this guy is just a phenomenal storyteller that if he came out with a true crime novel, I would be greatly intrigued to read it. I hope we get more writing out of Jon, because I thought his book was just so different from so many others that I have read, and that voice, I was captivated at this man describing how to prepare the perfect sandwich. It was just like, he's just really, I don't think it comes as a surprise. He's very good with his storytelling, as you see on television with his wording, but his book, I think it just was one that deserved the big spotlight when it came out.
I agree. I mean, obviously I'm biased when it comes to Jon, but I just think he's the best. I think he is so captivating when he is speaking. You listen. When he has a mic in his hand, you want to listen. When he's having a match, you want to pay attention. But when he started dabbling in this book world, which, by the way, he rode my coattails because I wrote a book first. But anyways, when he started working on this book, and he was so submerged in this world. I gave him one of my old laptops. He's typing away on it, and he was trying to craft how the book was going to come together, because he wanted it to be different from most pro wrestling books too. Of course, I mean, he's read every pro wrestling book I think that probably exists. So he knew what he liked. He knew what he didn't like. And for him to just, really put pen to paper and to have his voice come through the way that it did, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. I mean, the guy really is an artist, no matter which avenue he seems to be working in, as a pro wrestler, as a writer, as a creator. He is so good, and he knows himself so through and through. That's one thing that always kind of, not that it surprises me, but I guess it inspires me more than anything. Is sometimes when I'm talking to him just about anything, because I'll flip flop on things of whether I want my hair long or short, or what I want to wear one day, whatever. And he's like, I wear this. This is what I do. He is just so sure of himself in every step and every breath that he takes. And it's really cool to see someone exist in the world like that.
Something we've always wondered while watching the shows, especially since you've been back, in AEW and reunited with Jon, is what sort of thought has gone into discussing how much to recognize your relationship with each other on screen and in storyline?
It's never a conversation. It's never come up. It used to come up in WWE a little bit more. There was a couple moments when it kind of had to come up, especially when I'm on commentary and I'm calling his matches. It's kind of hard to ignore that. And some days we would ignore it. Other days we would lean into it. So that was always a little bit confusing for me on navigating that. But in AEW, it's different. We've been on camera, I think only once together in AEW, when I had to give Eddie Kingston the business because he couldn't get his shit together. But that's really the only time that's happened. And, I think the nice thing, I love that we get to work together. I love that we get to spend all that time together, but I also love that we do completely separate things. We're not getting in each other's way. He does his thing. I do my thing. Honestly, we show up to the building separately. I go ahead of him. He comes at whatever time he shows up. He goes and does his thing. I'm busy doing my thing. And then we get out of there together and we go back to the hotel room and kind of go through our days and stuff. But we really keep our work separate despite working for the same company and doing the same kind of thing.
Has there been much thought, oftentimes you might be interviewing one of his opponents or reacting to, or being on screen for a backstage segment right after he goes through, a really bloody match, for
right.
instance. Have there been much conversations about how you might handle those?
So we don't have those conversations, but those are things that I think about as a broadcaster. I mean, that's never something him and I speak about, but there's definitely been moments with Hangman, for example. I've had moments with Hangman when Hangman was doing a program with Jon, when I had to do some stuff with him on camera, and he's, mentioning Jon or throwing a dagger my way. He did it not even that long ago when we were doing a contract signing between him and Swerve, when he kind of still threw something my way. I'm like, buddy, this is not my problem. You guys worry about your shit. I'll do my thing. So, I mean, that stuff is going to come up every now and then. And I think you never want to like lean on it too much. I think you can acknowledge it and have a moment, but I will always, even if I acknowledge something, I still go, I'm doing a job. I'm being the journalist here. I'm not going to oversell something or overstate something to go, who is talking about my husband? How dare he? Somebody's like right in my face doing that. Like I remember Samoa Joe doing that when we were in AEW and having to like navigate that a little bit. And listen, when Samoa Joe's in your face, kind of talking some shit on your husband, I'm like, oh, buddy, what? But yeah, I think about that more in terms of how I'm going to react to things, but it's never a conversation that Jon and I are having.
It's always how I tend to, watch those segments is I get the sense that you are playing a professional broadcaster who has to keep it together and do their job despite, going through anything personal in the background. And
it's always that. I mean, whether it's doing stuff with Soraya, who's like my best friend, sometimes she'll do stuff where she's got to kick me out of a shot. And like, there's moments like that just kind of happen. And that really is what it is. It's kind of like playing the role of the journalist. You're keeping it straight and narrow. You're sort of playing the straight man, but it's those little nuances that I think can really make those moments, at least for me, feel a little bit more real and authentic.
Well, Renee, this has been such a pleasure to have you on, capping off our post-wrestling Christmas show. We have had a lot of guests on our show. Your favorite guest might have been on already because someone that is attached to our network is one Braden Harrington. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, his Halloween costume may, which he went out this past Halloween.
I saw this.
With about a dozen skewers in his head.
It's incredible.
The man goes above and beyond for Halloween, and he topped himself this year.
It is so good. I know. I was like tagged in that a few times and got to see it. I was like, wow, it's really great. Love it.
We also want to let everyone know that the Renee Paquette AEW Canadian tour is going to be taking place beginning March 16th, and AEW is going to be pretty much going across Canada from Ottawa back to Toronto on March the 20th, and then Quebec City, London, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Vancouver, and Calgary with tickets available at AEWTix.com. And I guess hopefully you get an extended stopover in Toronto to reacquaint yourselves with the comedy bars and such that the city still hosts.
I always make sure to give myself a little pad on either sides of the TV show to get my time in Toronto. So I'll probably be doing that in most Canadian cities. Honestly, like I've not been to Vancouver in forever. I've not been to Quebec City in a decade. So yeah, I'm really excited to go to some of these cities and show everybody around.
All right. So AEWTix.com, they're all available now. And Renee, this has been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Merry Christmas to you and your entire family. And thanks so much for joining us here on the Christmas show. Happy holidays.
Thank you guys so much. Merry Christmas. I'll see you guys soon.